All right. I know we focus on a lot of high school hoops and high school sports, but every once in a while I like to switch it up and talk Celtics because I'm just a giant Celtics fan and I love my Celtics and I'm happy and I'm lucky to have joining me today. Her show is one of the best out there, and she is the host of Boston Ballin podcast. I welcome on to the show Gabby Hurlbut is of Boston Ballin. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for that very kind introduction.
Yeah, no problem. Did I get your last name right? I forgot to ask that. I have the habit of butchering people's last names on the show. So
You did, and I'm very impressed because a lot of people don't pronounce it right.
all right. Well, I was gonna pause and ask, and I was like, wait, I'll just finish the intro. So, so Gabby, how are you doing during these crazy COVID times, and how are you holding up?
Yeah, it's been tough. Definitely a weird situation, especially at first when it started and being in quarantine and everybody was trying to figure out how to occupy their time, me included. I would work, and then when I wasn't working, I was like, so what do I do with the rest of my time? Definitely binge watched a lot of Netflix shows and just hung out and found ways to occupy myself. But it's been tough. I see the light at the end of the tunnel though soon, so hopefully that pans out and actually happens. And now that people are starting to get vaccinated, hopefully we're heading in the right direction towards being able to lift a lot of these restrictions and just get life back to normal.
No, it'd be awesome to kind of go out and just have some normalcy a little bit, and go out to dinner and maybe not have to worry about forgetting your mask in the car, or going to the grocery stores and forgetting your mask, or turn around
I
and go
still
back to
do
your
that
mask.
sometimes. That happens sometimes still.
Oh, it's absolutely the worst. I do it constantly. I always forget that's in my car, and I'm like, God, I'll be walking because I'm thinking about my grocery list. But
Yeah, yeah, me too.
I want to know, for the listeners' sake too, as well. How did you start Boston Ball? What was the idea behind it?
Yeah, sure. So I was kind of thinking about the idea of starting a podcast for a while. I just figured it was something cool for me to be able to do, to have a platform to express ideas on things going on in sports and have a chance to bring other people on to talk about sports with me that are involved in the industry too. And I've always been a big sports fan, always been passionate about it. Started working at ESPN right after I graduated from college and was used to being around sports. And so I wanted a different avenue to be able to be creative and just have my own way of just expressing my ideas and everything. So kind of played around with the idea for a while and then realized it was something I wanted to do. And being a big Boston sports fan, growing up in Connecticut and being surrounded by these wonderful Boston sports teams, I realized that since Boston sports were my biggest passion and the teams I enjoy talking about the most, I figured it would be perfect to center my podcast around Boston sports. So that's how I kind of came up with the idea for Boston Balling. Launched my first episode beginning of December. So it's been a good couple months so far. I'm definitely surprised and just really grateful for the amount of support and following that it's gotten so far. I've had some cool guests on the show that are involved in Boston sports and just had some really good conversations with people. So just looking forward to the future success of the show. And I hope that I can continue to grow my following and continue to just have good conversations with people. And I drop an episode once a week. So it's definitely exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great show. I mean, you've done great things, and I always tune in when I can, and I've been enjoying it. I love just hearing about Boston sports, and it's nice to have a different platform out there that's not, the radio and the mix of politics. It's nice to hear just straight Boston sports. So you're doing a great job. I love listening to it. Now, if for the listeners, they can listen to it on any podcast platform or subscribe anywhere.
Yeah, you can find Boston Balling on any podcast streaming platform, Apple, Spotify, anything of that nature. It also has its own social media accounts. So it's at Boston Balling on Twitter and at Boston_Balling_podcast on Instagram. And there's a Boston Balling Facebook page, which I usually stream the episodes to live when I drop an episode every week. So you can find it anywhere if you just search Boston Balling.
That's awesome. Yeah. Subscribe, check it out. I highly suggest everyone check it out, listen to it. I know there's some Boston Celtics fans out there that I've had on the show. So, and some Boston fans, period. I know I've had the schedule around Patriots games before have people on the show. So, or people got mad at me for scheduling a show. So I gotta be more careful about that. I want to ask, a couple questions, then we'll get into the Celtics about yourself and who's been your favorite guest they've had on the show? If you can answer that one.
Oh gosh, I hope none of my guests listen to this episode. I've had some great ones. I thought Pat Light was awesome. He was very just outgoing and descriptive about his time with the Red Sox and what he hopes to see this season. I thought he was awesome. Steve Perot from Barstool was really good too. I had him on recently a few weeks ago. Really liked him. Definitely a lot of good guests, though. I really have been pleased with everybody I've had on. I've had a lot of reporters or, athletes or just people that are involved in the Boston sports scene in some way. And I have some cool ones coming up. So I've definitely been pleased overall with everybody I've had on. It's been great conversation. Everybody's been enthusiastic and excited about coming on the show.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. Yeah, the guy from Barstool was really good. I saw that episode, and I saw the one with Chris Lampton the other night or something.
Oh like yeah, that was Tuesday night.
Yeah, that was really
good. Yeah.
And then now, what is your favorite team out of the 5 teams in the city?
Yeah, so baseball is my favorite sport, so definitely the Red Sox. I've always been a big Boston sports fan in general, but it started with baseball and the Red Sox when I was really, really little, and I was at my cousin's house and they had the Red Sox game on. I was no older than 4, and they said, you should like the Red Sox. And I said, okay. I didn't really know what the Red Sox were at the time because I was pretty young, but then I started watching Red Sox games on my own, which led into me watching other Boston teams on my own. So that's kind of how my interest grew, but definitely go the furthest back with baseball.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Big Red Sox fans too. It's funny too. I think between Connecticut and Rhode Island, I feel like they're split sometimes between the Yankees or the Red Sox. You can go either way. So I think you made the right choice on that one.
I would say I did too, for sure. It's definitely fun being a Red Sox fan, a lot more so I think now than being a Yankees fan. I would know because my dad's a Yankees fan. So I've seen what he goes through, and I definitely agree that I picked the right side there.
Oh man, so I can only imagine what your household is like when you guys watch the games together. If it's between the Yankees and Red Sox.
It's intense. It's intense. I actually, for his birthday last year, got him tickets to a Red Sox Yankee game at Fenway. Really excited about going. I got great seats because his birthday was in March, so like 2 days before everything shut down, and then there were no sports, and then they ended up having a baseball season but no fans, so I couldn't use those tickets, and I got reimbursed. But I already told my dad that for his birthday this year, I'm going to get him the same gift, and we're going to go and we're going to spend a day together in Boston and then go to a night game for Red Sox Yankees. So that should be good.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, those Red Sox games are so much fun, and I hope we get back to some normalcy to get back to one because I love going to those games a bunch.
I know. Yeah, it's so much fun watching a baseball game in person.
It is. It really is. Nothing beats being at Fenway and just being in the city and going catching the game. So it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
All right, so I want to get into it now with the Celtics because we'll have to do some Red Sox talk another time down the line for sure. Have you on the show for that. Celtics season has been up, down. They're 4-7 in their last 11. What are your thoughts on them on their season? I mean, they had a great, a little high hopes for us last season. They made the conference finals. They lose to the Heat. It's unfortunate, but what are your thoughts on them like so far on this season? What being with where they are and what's going on? They're like an eighth seed right now.
Yeah,
the deep side.
They started off. It's one of those seasons for sure.
Yeah.
They started off strong, and I was really, really hopeful and really optimistic, and they were looking really good. And I got even more excited the closer that it got to Kemba's return. Then Kemba comes back. He started not playing well, and they started losing some games. And at first I was like, okay, we need to cut Kemba some slack. I mean, he's coming off an injury. He's been away from the game for a while. Let's just give him time to kind of get back into it and just see what happens. And then he started not performing to expectations either. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. And obviously I love what I've seen from Brown and Tatum, and I love that duo, and I hope that they don't separate them and they spend their entire careers in Boston, because that's going to be a sight to see for years to come now if they stay in Boston. They're so young that they still have so much of their careers left, hopefully. So that's really exciting to see. But in terms of just the overall team, what I'm seeing right now is not enough to take them deep into the playoffs right now. And I really do think that some sort of trade needs to and probably will happen by the trade deadline. The question of who it's going to be for and who's going to be traded, I think remains to be seen. But I do think that there's something that needs to be addressed still. And, you know, not having Marcus Smart is hurting, and we're seeing that for sure
Yeah.
because he was really starting to step it up. And I like what Peyton Pritchard's been doing, and he was stepping up a lot in Kemba's absence too. And I mean, even Robert Williams has been playing pretty well overall, but it's just frustrating because you see this team on paper and there's a lot of talent there. And I feel like we go through this every year where it's like, you know, we have a talented team and a talented roster, but there's just something missing that needs to be addressed. And I think in terms of, you know, the defense, they just are not consistent at all on defense. And that's a problem. And we saw that in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, it was a big issue. I think Tice had a hard time guarding Bam. Bam kind of ate him up,
Yeah.
and then just getting out to the wings on time with the 3-point shooting that the Heat had with them is tough. It was tough to watch. I mean, you just got frustrated watching because on paper the Celtics were a better team against the Heat, and now you're like, why can't we beat this team? Like, what's going on? So
everybody wanted and was hoping for, and I think might have been expecting a Lakers Celtics finals. And even myself, I was like, oh, that would be so great. Like, could you imagine, like, in this year with all these challenges and there was no basketball for months, and now we're getting it back, and we're getting like the best NBA finals that we could get right now in Celtics Lakers. And I think that a lot of more people would have been into that. I mean, seeing LeBron playing his former team also was something I think people were looking forward to, but I was just so hoping that that would be the year that they finally make that push and get to the finals and beat Miami, but it didn't happen. And the signings that they made this off season with Tristan Thompson, I had higher hopes for him than what I've seen overall. And I mean, lately he's kind of started to turn things around and play a little bit better, but earlier on in the season, I was like, this is just not the Tristan Thompson that anybody expected to see coming into this season. And it was frustrating, but I do like what I've seen from Tice better than what I've seen from Thompson overall.
Yeah, I had to agree. I was kind of surprised. I was excited to get Jeff Teague, and I thought Jeff Teague was playing pretty well at the beginning, and now he's fallen off. And I'm like, I was like pumped. I was like, this is a good, like a legit backup. I was gonna say quarterback, backup point guard to have to, for like the Celtics, they can actually make some sort of like run with it. Like, they deepen their bench, and then he just kind of fell off. And it seems like Tristan now is stepping up. It's just weird. It's all over the place.
That's what I was hoping too. I was really optimistic and excited about the Teague signing because I was like, oh yeah, well, they need some sort of reliable backup quarterback to Kemba. Quarterback. I said quarterback.
Yeah, just I was like, oh.
I don't think neither of us noticed either.
Yeah.
Backup point guard to Kemba, and I really thought that he was going to take on that role, and this just isn't panning out. And Danny Ainge needs to realize what's going on here, and he does need to make some sort of push. I think it's just a matter of who would be included, and I do fear that maybe Marcus Smart or like a Robert Williams would be coupled into a trade or something for somebody from one of those teams that is on the trading block right now.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous too with that trading block because I mean, they had that big exception. Like, do you think they could play in the play? Because it was like, I'm hearing a bunch of things with Drummond, Griffin. Last night they were talking about John Collins too, like being like a guy that they go for. Like, what are your thoughts on the trading block and who they're going to get?
I think there's a lot of players that they could get. I mean, John Collins is definitely the type of player to me that I actually could see fitting in with the Celtics. I think that could be somebody that would be beneficial for them to bring on. However, it depends what we'd have to give up for somebody like him. He's not somebody that I really would want to give up a big package for, but it depends on the caliber player. I mean, I know that Vucevic is also on the trading block too.
Yeah.
So that's another big name too that could work here also. But again, there's a lot of players on this roster right now that I wouldn't want to see go. But like you mentioned, I mean, with the Gordon Hayward thing, they should be, this is kind of setting them up to make a big move now before the deadline. They have the room and the opportunity to do it. So why not try to make that push? And I mean, things are coming out about how they likely are going to make a move, but I haven't really heard a lot of comments from Ainge on what he's leaning towards or who he's thinking about moving. So I think it depends on the player, but I think there's a lot of good players out there that genuinely could fit in with this team. It's just hard. I mean, I know people were talking about how we should trade Kemba. I'm not really on that train though. I mean, I know
No.
that people haven't liked what they've seen from him overall, but I just don't really side with the people on social media that are saying we need to get rid of Kemba, like he sucks. Like, me, no, he doesn't suck. I mean, at the end of the day, he's an all-star point guard, and the guy was injured, and like he has come out some nights and done his part and helped to carry the offense, but you can't rely on two people every night to carry your offense because it's usually either the other night it was like Kemba and Brown, and usually it's Brown and Tatum, and then Tice from three. And it's it's funny to think about that, but I mean, it's just, you can't come out and rely on like two people every night to carry the offense, and that's an issue. And I do think that there's room to make a move, and I do think that size is an issue. I think they could benefit from getting somebody that might be more of a threat in the paint, and I think that they can consider that too.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of options for them when it comes to making a trade, but I think it's necessary, and it's going to be hard to see some of these players go, I think. But if they want to get over the hump and really go for a championship, I don't see them beating teams in the postseason like Milwaukee or Brooklyn with what they have now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's really tough to watch because they have. I think they do need big. I'm also worried. Like, I like their bench, but at the same time, I'm not sure they're missing something. I feel like they're missing something from their bench. I mean, what are your thoughts on their bench? Is there some player that they could add to their bench too? Like, could they make a couple more trades to get to a bench player as well too? Or sign Jamal Crawford? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because he's still out there.
I mean, yeah, he is. I mean, nobody's talking about him. People kind of forget he's still out there. I mean, yeah, I think that they need somebody else that's like a veteran leader for this team. And I think when it comes to the bench, this goes back to what I was saying before about on paper, how when the season started, I was like, wow, this team has a pretty good bench. They've improved the depth issue that they've had, because depth was an issue the last few years. And that's kind of what held them back, was they had a great starting five on the court and not really a lot of other reliable players after that. And that's the issue that we saw Brad Stevens run into, was there weren't a lot of other players that he could utilize. But I think in terms of the bench, there's an issue of underperformance when it comes to players subbing into games. And at the beginning of the season, it didn't seem like it was as much of an issue when he was bringing people in. And you had players, I mean, granted, you had players underperforming at the beginning of the season, like Tristan Thompson, but when he brings players in off the bench now, it's almost like people are not performing to the expectations of the organization or of all of us really as fans. And that's kind of what part of the issue is here, I think. And that's something that may or may not be able to be fixed. And I don't know if we should be holding out and waiting to see if some of those players can kind of pick it up off the bench, or if we should just consider just trading somebody and just trying to establish more depth on the bench. Because yeah, I mean, you have great starters on this team, and you have a couple other players that could come off the bench and be good, but you can't win a championship without enough help on the bench. And that's somewhere that they should be considering too. And I think there's definitely some good players out there that could kind of be good locker room guys too, that can kind of help Kemba really be like a good, like, veteran leader for this team.
Yeah, I agreed. I think there's someone out there, and I think they're just young too. Like a very, very young team. I was watching them the other night, and I was like, this team is so just full of rookies. It's just like there's like rookies and 2 or 3 year players, and then there's Kemba, who might be the oldest guy on the team. So I think you're right. I think bringing in like another veteran guy I mean, I know they have Tristan Thompson, but and Jeff Teague, but I don't know how well they speak up in the locker room. But I think bringing in another guy with that veteran experience just kind of will help push them kind of in the right direction, kind of get guys set in the right straight, or just help guys out to point out what they need to do on the floor correctly to kind of get to the right spots to make their shots.
Yeah, and they need somebody that's versatile on both sides of the court. And we've seen a lot of that from Tice this year, actually, because offensively, I mean, he's been putting up numbers. And on defense, he's showing that he's a lot more reliable than somebody like a Tristan Thompson. But you need players that can really do it on both ends of the court. And there's some players on this team that really can't defend, and that's an issue. And it's frustrating to see because you'll be leaving people like Anthony Davis wide open for threes. It's like, come on, like, and I just so I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed come the trade deadline too. Is somebody that can be a threat on both sides of the court. And I know people were talking about this even with James Harden before he got traded to Brooklyn, how like people wanted James Harden to come to Boston. And I was like, absolutely not.
No, it's just
like the guy cannot play defense. And I was like, I do not want to see people like Jaylen Brown have to go for somebody like a James Harden. And if we make a trade, I want it to be for somebody that can really, really help strengthen some of those holes. And with James Harden, I mean, that looking at how the team's playing right now, realistically, he wouldn't do much for us in terms of improving areas that they're weakest in.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if we had James, I think he wouldn't be the players with the Nets because I think kind of KD and Kyrie kind of reel him in a little bit because I feel like we just see James Harden would be Houston, James Harden in Boston where, we just dribble the ball out and see how long it takes for us to dribble the shot clock out before we get a shot up, like play chicken with the shot clock. That's how I feel they play. Like I watched him and Chris Paul play together in the playoffs, and that's what it was like. I was like, who dribbles out the shot clock? Who can get to 1 second the quick, longest, or like who can shoot? I don't know. That's the way it was. So I was like, this is horrible basketball. It was awful basketball to watch.
Oh yeah. No, I was like, why do I have to watch this right now? Like, this is not the type of basketball I want to be watching. But I agree with you, though. I really think if he came to Boston, it would be a repeat of that. And I still hope that something kind of falls apart in Brooklyn come the postseason. And I've said this kind of once they got James Harden, I was like, wow, this team is putting a lot into Harden right now. They gave up pretty much everybody, all of their depth and everything. So I hope that they can, well, I don't hope, but for their sake, I guess, I hope they can win a championship in the next couple of years because they're really, really putting a lot of emphasis into that championship basket. And with that big three, that seems like it's great, but it's just with those three personalities, I just really feel like as it comes towards crunch time and into the playoffs, we could see some tension between those three. And that's something that I feel like could give the Nets trouble in the playoffs as opposed to other teams in the East.
Yeah. I fully agree. The one thing I thought when the Nets made that trade, I thought of the Celtics Nets trade. I was like, they just went all in again and just trade all their future assets just to kind of like do that. And I'm like, a part of me hopes that they, they keep losing and then they just maybe learn their lesson. Fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But
exactly of that trade though too, because I was like, yeah, because that trade was very, very similar. They gave up a lot in that trade, to get these really good players from the Celtics, and then it ended up working out better for Boston. So I was like, this could happen with the Nets too, that a lot of the other teams that were part of that trade ended up, I think, making out better, and especially long term. All of those other teams are set up for more long-term success than Brooklyn by far because of what they acquired in that trade. So it's going to be, Nets fans are going to be very, very unhappy, I think, if they can't win a championship in the next couple of years with Harden, because then they're pretty much starting over again.
Yeah, it's just a repeat. It's just like, all right, well, now we have to wait another 6-7 years and restart again. Like it's crazy. But it's like you said, I think the other teams won out. I think Houston won out big time. I think they're playing really good ball. I mean, John Wall's actually healthy for once in his career. He's playing really well. Oladipo's fitting in with, him and Cousins. So it's nice to see them play. And then Indiana is too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, all three of those teams that were in that trade, and I was looking at who they acquired, the other teams, I was like, these teams are going to be good in the next couple of years. Like, they got a lot from this deal, and they got a lot of young depth players that kind of made up the Nets. So those teams are going to be good. And I know even with John Wall, as soon as he got traded, I was like, oh, does that mean Bradley Beal is going to get traded? And that's a name that's been tossed around with the Celtics, is Bradley Beal. And obviously I would love to get Bradley Beal, but would it be worth what they would have to give up for him? I don't think so. Probably not.
No, I don't want to. Like, my biggest thing is, like, if they make a trade, I just don't want to see them give up Brown, like you mentioned, Brown or Tatum, because I think those are two, like, that. Those are your stars right there, and I think Brown has been on the rise. Like, he's just been, like, his points per game has gone up so much, and I think he makes Tatum a lot better than what he is.
Yeah, and they're both so young still is the thing. I would understand if they were older and kind of, like kind of past their prime type thing maybe, and we're just at the point in their careers where this might be kind of deteriorating, but they're so young that they have so much of their career left that I would hate to see either of them go. And I'd even be upset to see Marcus Smart go, but I do feel like he would probably be a player that I'd see whose name would get thrown into a trade for one of those players, depending on who the player is. But I do think that he's a player that Ainge would entertain at that trade deadline as somebody to give another team. Because it's noticeable that he's gone right now, and he's definitely missed. And he's a player that I think could provide a lot of value on some other teams. So I feel like he's a name that people might ask for from them as a trade option. So
Yeah, I think he's a glue guy. I think he's a glue guy. He's an energy guy. He gives you what you need to, come back to a game. If the crowds were there, it'd be, for some of the plays that he's made, like I think in the playoffs last year, he made some great defensive plays. Like, if that was in front of, like, the Celtics fans, they would be going nuts. It'd be crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. It's yeah, I know. It's weird not having fans there, but
Yeah, I miss going to the games.
there's nothing like going to games at the Garden. There's really not.
Yeah, there's so much fun. There's so much fun.
The environment there is just unreal.
Yeah. It's all, it's for all the sports. So, I mean, it's like that. I mean, I'm not a Patriots fan, so don't hate it. I'm a 49ers fan, so.
That's really random. Like, with considering your other fandom and being in Rhode Island, that's really random. But.
Yeah. Steve Young was a lefty. I was a lefty. I thought I was going to be Steve Young when I grew up. It didn't really work out.
Hey, we might get Jimmy Garoppolo from you, so.
Hey, you can have him back. He's made of glass. We'll see what happens there. Now, do you think not having Hayward hurts the Celtics? Like, do you think not having him on the team? Like, I know he was kind of a quiet killer last year. I mean, he averaged 18 points a game.
Yeah, this was definitely something that I was curious to see after everything happened with Hayward, and he goes to Charlotte, and I'm like, okay, let's see what happens here. And with his injuries and everything, a lot of people were like, he's not going to be missed, he can go there because he never really did anything because he was injured. But the reality of the situation is, when he was healthy last year, he was actually really contributing and being productive. And he became a valuable part of the offense last year when he was in games. And that, to me, kind of shows that if they had Gordon Hayward mixed in with the team that they have now, I almost feel like, yeah, they'd be playing better. And I feel like they wouldn't be sitting here at like 500 or whatever their record is right now. It's either 500 or like a game above 500.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't. I really think that they would be playing more competitive basketball right now if they had Gordon Hayward. And at first, I was like, I think it'll be okay. We don't necessarily need him. I mean, they may do without him when he was injured, but now that he's not on the team anymore, and we're really starting to see how this team is playing, there's certain situations where I'm like, man, if we had Gordon Hayward in the game right now, like, he could be making some of these shots. So I almost feel like, yeah, at the end of the day, it kind of is hurting them right now, and they're kind of missing something without him, I feel like.
Yeah, I do too. I don't it's a weird situation. I don't know why he left. It was a weird situation. I'm like always kind of curious of what happened there, because I don't know why he seems like he had a good relationship with Brad Stevens, so maybe there's something else going on. I don't know. It's so weird that he left.
Yeah, I mean, because like he had been working with Brad Stevens for a while, like even when he was in college. So he had that strong relationship with Brad Stevens that I really didn't think he was going to end up leaving. But that whole situation with Danny Ainge and with Charlotte and that whole trade, I was just like, this is just getting to be a mess. This is just kind of like I don't know what you're trying to do here, but this is just turning into more than it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually my next question because Danny Ainge, I think, like, what do you think about that trade with Hayward that we were going to get Miles Turner, and I think maybe who's the other guy? Was it going to be Oladipo or I don't know who it was, or it was just going to be Miles Turner? It was going to be
Oladipo was a name that was thrown out as a possibility in that trade, but there was never really a definite like we're going to get him.
yeah.
Miles Turner was the only real definite that they were going to give us.
Yes, and what do you think about like? I love Danny Ainge. I love what he has done, and you don't have to bash him because you might have him on your show one day, but I might, so I might not. So,
I can't have him here.
Yeah, but I'm like, I just think he kind of, I think he still plays off of that Nets trade and thinks he can get more than what he is, and I think people now know there's like a reputation of kind of not jipping people, but he like I think he sees more talent than where it is, and I think he kind of tries to get a little bit more than what it should be.
Yeah, I think he kind of missed the ball with the whole Gordon Hayward situation in general. I think that he didn't execute that the right way, and I think that we're sitting here now and we're realizing how impactful that trade was, and the fact that we're looking back at it now and we're like, what exactly does he feel like this did to make our team better? Because it doesn't look like it really did anything for us. And it sounds mean, but it really kind of does seem like that. And he does seem like that, kind of the way that he does things and his style are kind of along the lines of what you said, that he sees talent and kind of just sees them as more than they are sometimes, and overestimates players, I feel like sometimes. And with his offseason signings this year, I think people were pleased with bringing on Teague and Thompson, but then even with them like not really panning out right now, it's like, well, are they really the types of players that we should have been going after in the offseason? And it concerns me that he's kind of that way, because it worries me for the type of trade that he might make at the deadline. And I really, really hope that he doesn't make a bad decision when it comes to the player that we bring on, because if we bring somebody in and we get rid of some of this young talent that we have on this team right now, and it ends up being a player that underperforms or just doesn't work with the Celtics or with Brad Stevens, then it's just going to, again, look like it's just a missed ball on his part. And I really worry that this is the type of situation where it could be like that, because we've seen a lot of that from him just with the decisions that he's made. And it's frustrating. And I at the end of the day, I want to trust him, and I want to trust that he's going to make a big move that's really going to be beneficial for the Celtics. But when you get to the same place over and over for a few years and you can't go all the way, then something serious needs to change. And what that is, I don't know, but he needs to be the one to pinpoint that and recognize it and realize this is exactly what we need to do to get over the hump and go to the finals. Because a lot of people like to place blame on Brad Stevens and his coaching, but that's really not, I don't like that argument, because I really do like Brad Stevens as a coach, and I think he's done a lot for this team, and I think a lot of the players like him as a coach, and kind of click well with him and fit in with his coaching style. And I think that that's what's helped them get so far. And I really don't necessarily think that Brad Stevens as a coach is the problem. And I've heard people say things like they should fire Brad Stevens and get a new coach, which is just ridiculous to me. Like, why bring in a new coach right now when you have somebody like Brad Stevens in there who knows how to work with these players? It's not a Brad Stevens coaching issue that doesn't get us to the finals every year. It's always lacking a piece, and it's on Danny Ainge now to figure that out and figure out what exactly we need to really get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Brad Stevens reminds me, could be like a Popovich. He just has like a good system in place. And, I think he's that type of coach. And I think he's helped actually bring a lot of the free agents in because a lot of the off the All-Star break, because he coached one of them, I think a lot of the players like his style. And like, yeah, I would like to play for him. So, and then my other thing is I think Danny Ainge, ooh, I lost my thought on this one, but I think Danny Ainge is in that in between of he wants to stay young, but doesn't want to give up the pieces to kind of make that get over the hump to get that like veteran player as well too. It's like that in between. We're just middle of the road. You gotta choose a fork. If you want to rebuild, then rebuild. If you don't, then like, yeah, I don't know. That's how I
That's
think.
the thing that frustrates me too is like you see teams sometimes where they're in a blatant rebuild. And then there's the teams that are championship caliber, like teams like the Lakers, you know what I mean? And you see the teams in between, which is kind of where the Celtics are at right now. And it's like if you want to do a rebuild, that's fine, but you need to commit to a rebuild. You can't just kind of be halfway in with a rebuild and then just say, yeah, we're rebuilding, but not really be actively focusing on that. And if you're going the other extreme and you want to go all in for a championship like the Nets are doing, then you need to make adjustments that might involve, trading a couple of those young players that you were trying to develop as part of the rebuild.
Yeah.
Go and get somebody that can win you a championship if that's what you're trying to do. But it's frustrating not knowing what the actual goal is here. I don't even know whether Ainge sees them as contenders this year, because in some ways it seems like he does, and in some ways it seems like he's not focusing on that.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's like a weird. It's like just I don't know. He frustrates me.
Yeah,
Needless
he
to say.
frustrates
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
I hope he never sees this, because then he'll never come on my show.
Yeah, that'd be fine. He's heard worse. He's gone on the radio with other people. You could just blame it on me. I'll take the blame on this one. He'll just never come on my show. But like,
You're right. I'll be like, this whole thing was scripted. He told me to say every single thing that I said on the show. This is not
yeah, yeah. I'll go back and I'll rewrite the transcript and I'll send it to you. You can send it over to him. I'll date it too.
audio doesn't work, but here's a transcript of what we said.
Yeah. Here's a signed by a notary. It has to be real. I don't know. That was a witness. Someone was a witness here, but yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I don't want to bash him too much. I mean, I like him. I think he's done great things, but there's like that weird in between with Danny Ainge. It's just, I don't know if he can't make up his own damn mind of where he wants to go. I guess he can't get out of it.
And it's just getting very, very frustrating to watch games and be like, yeah, I mean, this team as it is isn't a team that can win a championship, but does he care? Because he's going for a rebuild. But if he's going for a rebuild, he's not really committing to that either. So I am sitting there asking myself all these questions during games.
Yeah, I do too. I sit there and I was listening to NBA radio a couple times, and I'm like, what does he want to do? Because they talk about the Celtics, like, what does he want to do? And like, we have all these great young pieces, but still, like, we're in the in between road.
Yeah, if they can get that one player, I feel like if they can get one player that can kind of be that third guy with Brown and Tatum, then they might be. I mean, I thought that was going to be Kemba, but Kemba's just been inconsistent. So you need somebody more reliable than him, I think, that can be versatile on both sides of the floor while you're having, Tatum and Brown go off every night and put up a bunch of points.
Yeah, we need someone. I mean, who out of all those guys in that trade deadline that would kind of match, who would you like to see them get?
This is a hard question. I've played around with a few names. I really would honestly like to see Vucevic as a player that comes to the Celtics.
Yeah,
I honestly genuinely think that he would be somebody that could be beneficial to this team, and I think he fills some of the holes that they need to fill right now.
I totally agree with you on that one. I think
And if he comes, I think I'd be okay with seeing Marcus Smart or somebody like that go if they brought him in, because he's somebody I think that can really help to address some of these problems and help make them more of championship contenders. Because I think that with the way they are now, I do think they can be a playoff team, and I think they will be a playoff team. But that's not good enough for me. Like, I don't want it to just be a playoff team that just goes down in the first round. I want it to be somebody that has a real chance of being contenders. And I think if you bring somebody in like that, who can, I think, bring a lot to this team that they're lacking.
Yeah, I agree. Vucevic is like the guy that I've been like hoping they've been getting for like a couple of years, because I feel like he's always in the rumor mill. or like trade rumors. And I just think he, like you said, he fills all the like the needs that we need. Like he's a good scorer, he's a good rebounder. He'll get you at least 15 to 20 sometimes. And he could shoot the three. And I feel like he's a quiet guy. I don't watch a lot of Orlando basketball, but like it seems like he's kind of quiet.
Yeah, no, I think he is. He's not very super outspoken really about things, at least from what I've seen. But I kind of want to be like Danny Ainge. This seems like your guy.
Yeah, Danny, if you're listening to this podcast right
Yeah,
now,
really.
ignore the other stuff we said, make the trade.
It doesn't matter anything else we said about this team. Just make that trade now.
Yeah, make that trade. Make the trade. Please, for the love of God. Yeah, I mean that's the only way I think they can compete with like the Sixers or like, and they look good too. The Sixers look good. They're not a joke, and the Bucks. I still think the Bucks are overrated, but that's just my thoughts.
Don't tell Giannis that because he just signed that big contract extension. I kind of am with you though. I honestly was surprised when Giannis signed that big extension with them because he was talking about leaving Milwaukee and everything else. And I really am not sure that Milwaukee is the team that he can win a championship with, at least not right now. And I feel like there actually are teams that he could go to and be in better shape to win a championship right now than being in Milwaukee. And I get that he loves being there and he loves the area and everything, but he's the type of player that obviously wants to win a championship soon. And to me right now, it doesn't seem like Milwaukee is that team. And they're a great regular season team. Obviously, they've been a great regular season team for a while, but then they get to the playoffs and they just can't get the job done. And I mean, that's just problematic. And Giannis does not want to keep going to the playoffs and just getting let down and not advancing to the finals. So I see the Bucks as a threat in the playoffs, of course. I mean, I really do. I see them as a threat to teams like the Celtics or other teams struggling, or maybe even the Nets. But I don't see them as a team that can go all the way to the finals right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think
it's just the same Bucks team to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I honestly think they're like that's a team that's like in the middle of the road that they're like, we don't like. I think they just signed a bunch of 3-point shooters to surround Giannis. And that's it. And I think until Giannis can become a consistent 3-point shooter, I think they're not going to be that much of a threat because I think the game plan's out on him. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the fun thing about the East right now is it's so wide open right now. And there's a lot of teams that we're seeing now that could emerge as serious contenders, but it's great that there's so many teams like that because it kind of leaves that window open for a lot of different teams. It's not like it's like there's one or two teams that it's like nobody's going to beat them. There's a lot of teams in the East that can seriously contend. And that's another thing that the Celtics have to think about is the fact that in the Eastern Conference itself, there's a lot of teams that they have to look at and be like, can we beat these teams with what we have? And the answer, when it comes to crunch time and playoff time, and I mean, obviously these games now aren't as important, but later on down the road, when they start to become more important, are these teams that we can beat when we need to beat them. And they lost by 1 against the Lakers, which was super upsetting. But that was a great game, though. They played really well. And I was like, if this is the Celtics team that comes out against all of these good teams every night, then they're going to be a tough team to play later on. But if you look at the way that they've been playing lately, it's like, I mean, the answer to that question about, like, are these teams we can beat later on? A lot of the answer to that is no for a lot of cases. And unfortunately, I don't want it to be that way. But again, they need to make one of these moves. And if they do, and they start playing better, then they really can probably contend with some of these teams.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. And like they recently just played the Hawks, and same thing. The Hawks aren't the same team that you could just beat up on anymore. They're a good team too. It's just, like you said, it's wide open. It is wide open. It's a wide open East. I mean, I think the East has gotten a lot stronger. I think in the past years it's been pretty weak. Usually, I mean, Cleveland came out of it like 17 times. So whatever.
Yeah, really though. But yeah, I know. Usually it's like, oh, the West is so much better than the East. And I mean, this year the West is really strong too, though. I mean, the Jazz have been surprising everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot, and the Clippers are going to be the Clippers, and the Lakers obviously, and the Nuggets. But so, I mean, the West is obviously really strong too, but the East has gotten better now that they have some of these players in the East, like James Harden and Russell Westbrook, you know what I mean, who are in the West. So those types of players being in the East now, is just going to make the East more competitive. And I think the Wizards are well on their way. Obviously not this year, but I think that they're close to being one of those teams that can contend again also, because they have a lot of the pieces that they need now. And I think getting Russell Westbrook was really good for them and kind of key, but they have, I think they still have some more pieces they need to get. But in the next couple of years, I think that's going to be another team in the East that we're going to have to worry about.
Yeah, it's true. I hope not, but yeah, it's true. There's so many. I just feel like there was so many teams in the East that like rebuilt, and now they're kind of coming alive. Like Orlando is like another one, unless they're gonna knock it back down again. But like Orlando's a team that kind of got in. They got hot during like down in the bubble, and they played really good basketball down there too. So it's just like it's weird. I don't know. It's like weird because they could be a team too. If they're an 8 seed, they can give a 1 seed a hard time.
Yeah, they're not a sleeper team by any means, and nobody talked about them last year. And even when they got into the bubble, nobody was really acknowledging how well they were playing, at least from what I saw. And I was like, this team is not a joke. Like, this is a team that could go into the postseason and upset anybody with the way that they're playing right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. The East is like getting stronger. I mean, the West is obviously good. I mean, the Suns are another team too out in the West. They're playing really
Yeah,
good.
let's not forget about the Suns. They're good. They're playing really well this year. They're playing good basketball.
I think that Chris Paul trade it fit him perfectly. I think he doesn't play well with other veterans, but he's better with like younger players.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it. We saw that happen. I mean, we've seen him try playing with other veteran players, and it just doesn't work out. I think he's in a great place for him, and I think that trade really worked out for the Suns. And he's in a place now where he can be kind of a veteran leader there and be the one that's helping the young players, and that's the position that he wanted to be in, I think. So that seems to be working well for them. They're going to be a good team too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see what happens. It's gonna be an interesting season for sure. Hopefully the Celtics, Danny Ainge, if you're listeing, please, make a trade.
Yeah, really.
Us. Like
soon I'm getting frustrated with watching this team.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. I get a couple more questions, and we will wrap it up. So I want to know, what do you think? Finals predictions. What do you have for the NBA?
I've pondered this for a while, and this is something that is a hard question to answer, just considering all the circumstances. But as of right now, like what we're looking at now and what I'm seeing out of a lot of these teams in the East, I really feel like I have to go with Philly right now, over Brooklyn.
Wow.
And I say that because something about Brooklyn just seems like that's set up for disaster and set up to fall apart come postseason time. So I'm going with Philly, and that pains me to say because I really don't like the 76ers either, but they're playing some solid basketball, and Embiid is just, he's figured things out. So I'm gonna have to go with them. And the West also is a tough one. There's some good teams out there, but I really want to go with the Jazz.
Oh wow, that's a big.
I say this because everybody's gonna pick the Lakers again.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Lakers is that there's a lot of teams out there that are showing they can beat them right now. And obviously this happened last year, and we saw, with AD and LeBron, like things kind of took off slow for them and then they clicked when they needed to. But Utah is one of those teams that people aren't taking seriously right now, but I think they like that because they're playing really good basketball when people aren't taking them seriously. And I think that they can be a team that can be a serious problem for some of these other heavily favored teams in the West.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good pick. I think those are really two good picks. Actually, kind of surprised about the Utah one, but yeah, because I just expect everyone to go to the Lakers or the the Clippers. That's that. But I like the
Lakers.
What's that?
I just said I don't think I can physically, for my well-being, pick the Lakers.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. I saw you getting pale when you're talking about the Lakers. You didn't feel well. Yeah.
I cannot miss the Lakers win another championship this year.
No, I can't. There's so many LeBron fans out there. I just
like, I mean, yeah, LeBron, let somebody else win.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the Jazz is a good pick. I mean, like you said, I think everyone's sleeping on him. I think Donovan Mitchell kind of like, after Shaq said that stuff to Donovan Mitchell, it was kind of like he just like turned it up a notch. He's like, "Yeah, you want to say that?"
Fire in him, it seems like, because that was really a turning point.
Yeah,
they're going. It seems like they're going into these games with a lot of passion and energy, and they're not messing around this year. I think they're going to be really good down the stretch.
I do too. Yeah, and I think there was a lot of high hopes for them last year in the playoffs, but I think a lot of guys they had some injuries and the
Yeah.
bubble. And some guys didn't show up. I think too as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something, as long as they can stay healthy. I mean, that's going to be a team that a lot of people I think are going to sleep on, but I can see actually going really really far if they can stay healthy and everything clicks and continues to go the way that it's going.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, last question. I asked this question to all my guests because I feel like we always talk about sports, but what's like one thing that you like to do outside of podcasting and sports?
Yeah, so I sing. Like, I'm a huge music person. I've been singing since I was 4 when my parents signed me up for my first musical. And I actually started a YouTube channel during quarantine, like of me recording songs, like singing songs and uploading them to YouTube. And I was in an a cappella group in college and was always in like school musicals and choir and stuff. And that's definitely my other kind of main interest besides sports.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And like, is that underneath your name, the YouTube channel? Because I'm gonna check this out as soon as we. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I believe it's under Gabby Elizabeth.
All right. All right. Well, I'll check it out. That sounds awesome. Is there a favorite like kind of music that you like to sing? Or is there an artist or a favorite song that you like?
I kind of like a lot of different stuff. I like Taylor Swift and a lot of her songs. A lot of her older music more though in particular I like better. But I like a lot of different artists and a lot of different genres. I've listened to a lot of different types of music too. So definitely really versatile with that. But yeah, the YouTube channel was definitely something I started it a couple months into the pandemic last year, and it was a good way to kind of just get back into singing and have something fun to do when I was just stuck at home and couldn't do literally anything.
That's awesome. That's great. That's really cool. Yeah, definitely have to check it out for sure. That's great. I'm sure you're a great karaoke partner as well too.
Cool.
What's that?
So I've been told. So if
Yeah.
anybody's looking for a karaoke partner, they know where to find me.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, I know who to call. I can't sing worth a crap, but I'm entertaining. But Gabby, this has been awesome. It's been so great to talk NBA basketball with you. That's awesome. You're doing a great job with the podcast as well too. I love listening to your show. You're doing awesome. It's definitely gonna be a show that it's gonna be on the rise. I mean, it's on the rise already, but you're doing a great job of everything that you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing. It's been super entertaining. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun, and I hope to just kind of continue to grow Boston balling, and I hope that the Celtics can figure things out for the rest of the season.
I hope so too. I'm sick of I'm getting gray in my beard because they keep stressing me out.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Maybe you should tell Ainge that too.
Yeah, I'll tell him that one. I'm like, this is the reason why.
You were the reason why, really.
You're the reason why. It's not age or anything, but it's Boston Celtics. Well, thank you so much, Gabby. I appreciate your time, and have a good one.
Thank you.